My name is Ginny, also known as 2/3 Lotus, everywhere on the internet. This clip is part of my series, The Poets of Twitch, where I analyze my viewers' writing live on stream. Nothing has been edited out, so you're seeing this exactly as streamed with all of the imperfections and tangents that come with being live. If you want to catch me live or want more information, check out the description. Otherwise, enjoy some excellent writing. Here we are to do some poetry. This is titled, She Forced Her Way Into My Home. And it's not poetry, it's a short story. I'm going to probably keep calling it a poem because this is her way into my home. Bam. The short story that I will continue to pretend is a poem. Okay, by Drowning Devil 12. Right? 12? I am so good. I remember my chatters. That's crazy. Except it's sort of like weird. It looks like it's an exponent. Doesn't really matter. A short story. A short story. A short story. I insist. It's a short story. I'm trying to get this straight. By Drowning Devil. Can I maybe straighten this stuff? I need like a real setup. There we go. That? A little more? A little more. You're very memorable? Well, you've just been in my chat a lot. Like, you're definitely one of the most frequent contributors, which I like. By the way, still learning grammar, so sorry if it's bad. No worries. I think grammar is kind of optional in that we can usually understand each other despite, quote unquote poor grammar. And if ideas are communicated, then why, if they are communicated effectively without proper grammar, then like what's the issue? If I know what you said, right? We'll see. Maybe it's just unintelligible and I'll have to scold you, but I think we'll be fine. She forced her way into my home by Drowning Devil. A brick has been added to my home. It's on the second floor, near the door of my son's bedroom. I ask my husband where it came from, but he says it's always been there. I look a little closer. It seems to not fit right into the hole it was placed in. I try to pull it out, but despite the space, it remains stuck in place. Transgender voice crack. A few weeks went by and I noticed the pictures on the walls are changing. My son has been replaced. A girl in his place. She's even in the photos when he was a boy. A girl in pigtails and a muddy dress, replacing my little boy. She's in my house. My son is gone. And she has taken his place. My husband acts like this is normal. That we've always had a daughter. I've never had a little girl. She is not mine. I want my son back. I want my little boy. I have to handle this. There is a shotgun in the attic, I presume is what you're saying here, which is ATTIC. But there's a shotgun in the attic. That's what it feels like. I know what I have to do. Okay. Shotgun the daughter. Wild. Wild indeed. Feels kind of trans to me, but that's because I'm trans and everything is trans when you're trans. Very nice, Drowning Devil. I would snap if my nails weren't drying. Maybe I can still... No, I'm not gonna try. I think attic auto-corrected. Okay, would you like this to, for the purpose of this analysis, be attic? I didn't catch it before sending. Okay. Is this what we would prefer? I see. Okay, beautiful. Then attic it is, as if it was never mispenned. I didn't see any grammatical issues, but that's also because everything is poetry in my head and grammar's a lie, so I'm really not the person to ask. Admittedly, I do have a good grasp of grammar, but I don't really care enough, so we're gonna read this one more time, as we do. No mistakes, only happy accidents. No accidents, only happy mistakes. She forced her way into my home. A brick has been added to my home. Hi, King Pollo. It's on the second floor, near the door of my son's bedroom. I asked my husband where it came from, but he says it's always been there. I look a little closer. It seems to not fit right into the hole it was placed in. I try to pull it out, but despite the space, it remains stuck in place. A few weeks went by, and I noticed the pictures on the walls are changing. My son has been replaced, a girl in his place. She's even in the photos when he was a boy, a girl in pigtails and a muddy dress, replacing my little boy. She's in my house. My son is gone, and she has taken his place. My husband acts like this is normal, that we've always had a daughter. I have never had a little girl. She is not mine. I want my son back. I want my little boy. I have to handle this. There is a shotgun in the attic. I know what I have to do. She forced her way into my home. I like this. I like this. This definitely feels similar to what is the poem? What is the poem called? A Gun and a Bullet. Feels similar to this. I don't remember. I feel like this was you. Maybe it was Arson Asher. But feels similar in that, like, gun, ending, intruder to be dealt with that we read another time on stream. That was you. Okay. I feel like you often write about also, like, these spaces, right? I sit alone in a gray room. I think this is one of my favorite poems you've written. I sit alone in a gray room. And I like this sort of consistent theme of spaces. And I think I actually might have, like, a book recommendation for you if you're willing to take one. A book about, you know, the spaces that we create, the spaces in which we live, if you're interested. Oh, yes, of course. Okay, let me grab it. Because the author has a weird name. Witold Rybczynski. Yeah, I think that's the one. Well, are there others? I think it's the only one. The Most Beautiful House in the World by Witold Rybczynski. Someone just write this in chat for me? So this book is really good. It's about a guy, he's an architect, and he sets out to build a boat. He sets out to build a boat because he's always built houses, and he thinks building a boat would just be really, really, like, enjoyable, right? So he goes to build this boat, but he realizes if he needs, like, he lives in the middle of Canada, not the middle, but, like, not by the coast. He realizes, like, oh, I need a place to build my boat, right? This is all sort of the setup. So he starts to design as a architect, like a boat shed, like a boathouse, right, to build his boat. and he buys some land off on the coast, and he begins to build this place. And as he does, his relationship to the boat and the boathouse and all of these things change, I guess. And his original goal of building a boat takes on a different form, is all I will say. And I think it's really about, it's a great story about creating spaces and the purposes of things and things changing. Tangentially related to like the poems you write themselves, but I would highly suggest it. I think it's an excellent book, and it's a pretty short read. It's not very long. It's written fairly simply. There's like some fun like kind of diagrams that he did, like that's the boat he wants to build, right? So in a way, it's super quick. It's like 200 pages. It has some pictures throughout. But it's very cool. It's very cool. A little snapshot into someone's life and a fascinating story. See if I can find a PDF, because I'm very broke. Yes, do that. Or, Drowning Devil, go to your local library. Yes, the library. I think a lot of people don't realize how magical, especially in America, like public libraries are. Of course, they're also kind of under attack. But you can go and you can get a free card where you can go in and access like thousands of books, and often also gives you access to like digital libraries and these kinds of things, where if they don't have a physical thing, there's also large like online library databases where you can do this. You can get movies. You don't need to like pirate things. You can just go to your library, and as long as you turn it in on time, right? As long as you turn it in on time, you don't pay anything. There are no local libraries where I live. I live like 30 minutes away by drive from any form of town. Few options. Find a friend with a car. Find a loved one with a car, although I know you don't have the most supportive people around you. Or I think there's like such things as like digital library cards and digital libraries. Look into it. Because then if you can get to a library, if you can find someone to get you to a library, you can get like, a week's worth of books, which maybe is just one book at first, because, becoming a reader is a process. But like then you can just go get like a haul of books and then read them, educate yourself, and then bring them back like the next week. Make it like a regular thing with a friend, if you have a friend who can drive. Or find one. Todd writes. Hi, Todd writes. Little free libraries, LFLs though, of course, expand your reading to stuff you really never expected. Yes, absolutely. Maybe they will have the book at the school I'm going to. I doubt, but I can look. It's a start. You can absolutely look. Also, welcome, Todd writes. My name is Ginny, also known as 2/3 Lotus. We talk about poetry here, but we're kind of reading a very short story vignette type thing from Drowning Devil, and it's called "She Forced Her Way into My Home." So I recommended a book about homes. We're gonna dig into this. We're gonna do some analysis. We're gonna talk about it because it's fun. So, a brick has been added to my home. It's on the second floor near the door of my son's bedroom. I ask my husband where it came from, but he says it's always been there. I look a little closer. It seems to not fit right into the hole it was placed in. I try to pull it out. Despite the space, it remains stuck in place. So, I really do think, It's on the second floor near the door of my son's bedroom. Just kind of this thing that's not super evident, like second floor, up and away from where one might normally be, right? And I asked my husband where it came from. He says it's always been there. I think this line is really interesting, and I like this poem as the perspective of someone who is sort of fearing change, right? Because change is a very hard thing to deal with. And change, it seems to not fit right. And you try to resist it, and unfortunately you can't. It's stuck. And then sometimes people will just, go with the change as if nothing is happening. Because, well, that's one way to go through life, is just to accept these changes. And this can feel very scary, right? Especially if you do not, if one does not accept change and others do, it can really feel kind of like a big old gaslight, right? Where you're like, these things are changing, it's confusing, I can't necessarily keep up. And yet, everyone just seems okay with that. So, like, that can be a very scary thing. And when we're scared, we can have very strong reactions to things, which we see in this poem, or this short story, right? Also, as the school librarian, if they can get it for you, most libraries do interlibrary exchange. Yes, Drowning Devil, when you go to school, your librarian should be, like, your best friend, because you seem like you enjoy writing. You send me lots of writing, and librarians are people who can connect you to groups of people who are interested in books and reading and writing and literary resources in your area. And there are people, like, one of the best things about schools is the people it can connect you to, right? And I think the library should be the first place that you look for that as someone who likes words, right? I don't know if Florida's been a book banning spree, though we'll see. This is not like a bannable book, I would say. It is just sort of a memoir by a guy about building a boat and a house. So there's nothing queer about this. There's nothing particularly inflammatory. I think it's just a lovely little book. And I don't think Florida will ban books as a concept. Like, I think y'all will still have books, at least for some time. And at that point, that's when you should pick up Fahrenheit 451 and read that book. You should read that. If you haven't read Fahrenheit 451, I mean, you read it, lots of people read it in high school, but I think it's a great book. Yeah, you've read it? Okay. Or if you haven't, then you should. Anyway, so change and fearing change. I want to talk about this woman and her fear of change as I see it. I read Fahrenheit 451. I read Fahrenheit 451, except I was in high school when, as I've said many times, I didn't really like English. And I didn't realize how much I liked that book because I just sort of was not very invested in school, sadly, right? A few weeks went by. Yeah, Todd writes. That's where you can submit if you want to send me. I mostly just look at poetry on stream or extremely short prose, like half a page at most, for your guidance. And yeah, if you want to send me stuff, we have a couple streams worth of backlog right now, but I'll definitely be able to get to it at some point. And sometimes people let their place in line go for the newcomers. A few weeks went by and I noticed the pictures on the walls changing. My son had been replaced. A girl in his place. She's even in the photos when he was a boy. A girl in pigtails and a muddy dress, replacing my little boy. Right? Always trans. We're going to talk about that in a sec. I think it's funny that Fahrenheit 451 was required reading for us, and now we have this stuff going on. But that's politics, so I won't go into it further. I mean, I think that is politics that relates to like literature and writing, and that's the kind of thing that I definitely do feel happy to talk about on here. But I think you'll find that my stance is just fully pro literacy. Nothing should be banned. Uh, Kids need to be able to read and learn freely, and sometimes that means uncomfortable topics. So, but like books are a very safe place to encounter a topic that is, you know, questionable for, you know, maybe a child, to like have someone talk to them about it. I don't think anything should be banned, even the weird stuff. Yeah, exactly. Um, so this, I'm looking at this poem right now from a transgender angle because you're trans and I'm trans and it feels trans. But we can also maybe look at it from another angle afterward. But more so, regardless, from a look at fearing change, as I said. So, and one thing that I think can be particularly scary when you fear change and something changes in your eyes, right? I see this person as a boy and now they're a girl, right? And then people go and tell me that they've always been the way that it was before, right? I think this is another sort of thing that can feel like adding on to the, I guess, the quote-unquote gaslight that's happening to this person. And it's not that they're being gaslit, right? They don't understand. But it can be scary, right? And that's an important thing to remember, right? That people are just at different spots sometimes, and thus we sort of have to give provision for people to take time to improve, because some people do react like this. And hopefully not many people react like this. I know what I have to do to such changes, but these are world-shattering things for some people. If we're going to talk about transness. Transness is not political, by the way. For anyone wondering. So transness, I love drawing trans flags on poems. Blue, pink, white, pink, blue. The classic. This is a great flag, I must say. Like, very, very well done. Very, I don't know, very demure or something. So this is an existential threat for people. And I don't mean that in like a way to justify hate, right? But this is like world shattering sometimes. Because when you spend X years of your life, let's say 40, twice as many years as I have even experienced in my life, being told one thing, and one thing that is extraordinarily static. Gender. Binary. This is how it works. We tell this to people, right? Or people have been told this for years and years and years and years and years, that it doesn't change. And that if people say that, it's weird and it's bad. Then when this shift does come, this larger societal shift, then it does challenge a belief that is like super ingrained in the mind. And it is natural when you have these deep beliefs being challenged, right? To just have fear, right? Because then it's like, one, mind goes slippery slope. What else are they going to tell me? What else is different about the world? What you see people say, like, oh, what are they going to say next? That I can identify as an attack helicopter? No, this is messed up. You know, like this happens. It's an example of something that happens, right? And it's very dangerous. May I tell you a fun fact about the story while I was writing it? Sure. Yeah. As long as it doesn't give me too much explanation of the poem, because I don't want to hear that. So you have these ingrained beliefs, and when you come and just like take a sledgehammer to the bottom of the tower and the whole thing falls over, or maybe more like we'll call it a sledgehammer. It's very painful, right? Because you need to rewire these connections, like probably literally physical connections in your brain that say like, girl is this and boy is this. And it took you 40 years to make those. So, of course, I mean, it's not going to take 40 years to unmake those, but it is going to take like 40 years worth of unlearning, which can happen very quickly. It's generally just that the more quickly it happens is going to be more painful. But I spent the first 9 years of my life in Utah. Salt Lake City, didn't know what a gay person was, I feel like there was like one black kid in my school, and that's kind of fucked up. Like that there was only one, not like there should be. I mean it's the demographics of the area, but still, like there's a reason Utah's white, because they're very like closed off. They don't like people. So I spent like 9 years in Utah, and then moved to California, the Bay Area, Berkeley, Oakland, queer place, right? And then it's like weird. I mean, of course, I was still young, so I didn't have that much like unlearning to do. But I think the first time one of my friends like came out as trans, it was this like thing that I had to learn, right? And luckily I didn't have to unlearn so much binary gender, but so I try to give grace, right? So already I kept thinking of those women who shortly after birth experience psychosis and end up hurting their children. I just thought it was interesting, I guess. Horrible but interesting. Yeah, I mean I don't know too much personally about that phenomenon. But it's interesting, right? Why that would happen. I mean, it's a very intense emotional experience, right? To give birth. There's probably some of it. She's in my house. My son is gone, and she has taken his place. My husband acts like this is normal, that we've always had a daughter. I have never had a little girl. She is not mine. I want my son back. I want my little boy. So, this almost feels like an understandable point to come to for this woman. Because everyone is telling her that you sort of have this entirely new person, that they've been replaced, that they're different, right? When identity is so wrapped up in, like, when gender is so wrapped up in, like, being a static thing, and you change that, it can feel like we're just reinventing this person. So the idea that this is like a new person, an intruder in the house, doesn't actually feel all that crazy for someone to say. As kind of horrible as it is, since we're looking at a person and we're looking at this person's child. But, you know, that this feels very, like, kind of realistic, despite its horrible nature. And then we, of course, are attached to things, and we don't want to lose things, right? This is a fear of change. Loss. I think people describe it as like grief when they have their little boy, their little girl, grief, kind of die in this way. Especially when we use words like dead name, right? It's interesting. For a while, my mom was like, even my mom, who's very supportive of me, had this attachment and felt this loss of my name. Well, and she's like, oh, well, I still like the name, insert name. And she's like, would say stuff like that. And that's no problem, Mom. We love you. I love you. I love you so much. You're amazing. But this is a fear of losing that thing, a name that, you've liked for 19 years, right? Or that she liked for 19 years. It just happens. Shotgun needed indeed. All these new girls in pigtails had something weird about them. Hi, Pinguino Man. Welcome in. Welcome in. I know you just joined. I have to handle this. There's a shotgun in the attic. I know what I have to do. So this is like very... I think it's still a leap, right? Like, it sort of feels like she logically progresses and then just has this almost... You talked about you had psychosis in mind, right? And that this is a very, like, nonsensical leap, right? But it also isn't. Like, defend your home, gun, whatever. For a person, I mean, I wouldn't defend my home with a gun, right? But, we are sort of brought to this point and can see how it starts to get understandable, right? What I was saying, Pinguino Man, you just joined, but unfortunately I'm running an ad. For anyone new around here, ads, don't watch them, please. I ask this of you. Stand up and stretch. Look away from your screen. Drink some water. These are good things for you. Watching ads, listening to ads, bad things for you. Don't watch these ads. Try to not mess up my nails when I stretch. It's gonna be tricky. I already messed up one of the thumbs starting stream. It's all like the computer and iPad and things. This is sandalwood. Makes my room smell good. Very, very good thing. I think it's sandalwood. Maybe it's the other one. Palo Santo? Are those the same thing? Yo, Hamilton. We love Hamilton. Okay, just sit back down, get settled. Welcome back. I'm still Jenny, still known as Toothless Lotus, and I missed some chats. I always thought it was so odd to think of this person as dying, because it's still the same person. They were always there. Just your perspective on them had changed. Definitely not watching those those nasty fascist anti-Catholic ads. Maybe that's a Singapore thing, but I also just don't I just don't watch the Twitch ads because I run the Twitch ads. I am the Twitch ads, actually. Give it for America's famous fighting Frenchman, Lafayette. Boyo for president 2020. 2025? You're gonna like, are we doing a coup here? Kind of sounds like a coup if we're getting a new president in 2025. King Poyo and foreign election interference. Revolution. Perhaps. No Ireland? Oh. You're gonna be the Irish president. Very cool. I wish you luck on your campaign. I can run some foreign election interference for you. Do I hear the people sing? Do I hear the people sing? Do you hear the people sing? Is that another lyric? Do you hear the people sing? I feel like that's another lyric. Is that also from Hamilton, or is that from something else? It's another part of Hamilton? Okay, it's been a while since I've listened to it. I really like it. I will just listen to the soundtrack sometimes, like all the way through. It's a brilliant piece of work. So, we were talking about something. I assume you meant from Les Mis. Yeah, I was thinking Les Mis too. Nah, I'm just messing. Michael D. Higgins is gonna be president again. King Pollo, I know you're not gonna be president. You're like not an adult. I'm just leaning into the bit. Thought it was. Oh yeah, so we were talking about people dying, generally, and that's always fun. I mean, it's not. Oh, it is from Les Mis. Okay. It's been a minute since I've heard either. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I've been off my musical grind, I would say. So, whatever. Short story. Short story, not a poem. Very short story. It just feels like a prose poem to me, honestly. If you're not familiar with what this is, do you know what a prose poem is, Devil? Prose poetry. Because you do sort of use this like metaphor of the brick. Okay, you don't. Perfect. Education. Y'all. Your least qualified English teacher. Prose poetry is a kind of poetry. This is an R. Prose. With an E. So not like pro, like a professional, or prose, but it has an E. Like prose, which is the word for like the kind of writing you would see in like a novel most of the time. So like Dune, for example, by Frank Herbert, is a big pile of prose. The Most Beautiful House in the World by Witold Rybczynski is prose, right? However, it is not exclusively used, right? For like novels and anything like that. And it's generally like descriptive, as opposed to like something informative. Like I don't think you'd call an article prose. Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone who knows better than me. But this can also be used in poetry. And basically it means we sort of take this simple, I call it simple, straightforward descriptive writing style and still write something poetic with it, right? And we would call that a prose poem. So it's sort of hard to define because I show it kind of like this. We have like novel, we'll say prose, right? And we have like, I'm really gonna make this look trans, huh? We have poetry, prose and poetry, right? And it's a spectrum, just like gender, I guess. Right? Looks something like this. And generally, you can have poetry. It can move like a little bit more toward prose, have some more of these like straightforward descriptive elements. It's still going to be poetry. And we can have prose, and it can be a little more poetic. Maybe we do some like magical realism, Gabriel Garcia Marquez type style stuff. So, you know, like here would maybe be like Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He was a magical realist, which is just really wacky prose, I would say, but I wouldn't call him poetic prose, in my opinion. And then, you know, here would be like full-on prose, if we're going with G's, George R.R. Martin, right? We're just writing to describe a story. And then poetry. So I don't know, full-on poetry would probably be like verse. So this would be something like the Bard, Shakespeare. And then as we move a little closer, maybe Bukowski gets a little more prose-like in some of his descriptions, and it just continues. And then we get to like the gray area, the non-gender conforming type of writing, or non-genre conforming, right? And I like this word. I like this term. Genre non-conforming. Like gender non-conforming. I think that's funny. So then we kind of bite in from the sides and get more toward a middle. And dead between poetry and prose is definitely what we would call either. I mean, let's do another subset. This is like we would call this poetic prose, and this would be prose poetry. And basically the difference is that this is more poetry flavored, right? So it is poetry. We call it poetry, we write it as poetry, but it just has a hint of prose, or not a hint, but it takes from prose. And then if we think something is more prose than it is poetry, then we would probably put it, here and call it poetic prose, because it's prose that's slightly poetic. So it's all like a big dumb spectrum, and it doesn't really matter. And I would say generally, like, short stories, like these kind of genre things don't necessarily matter. Like I think a short story can be like most of this space. I don't think like that would just be a long poem. But I think short stories can generally be like all of this. I think novels can get about that far, before they flip into poetry, right? I think, it's just a frame to understand writing. But so I guess having something that you might call a short story actually probably can still be poetry. It's probably just prose poetry, right? Also, there's other things other than like short story, novel, poem. If I were to describe this, I used the word once or twice already. I called it a vignette, which is normally like super short story where it still kind of does the prose thing, but I think they can lean more poetry. Also blur. Thank you. So like I think a vignette can lean a little more toward poetry, and is generally going to be even shorter than a short story. Because short stories can be as long as like I feel like I've seen short stories as long as like 50 pages. Because you're not going to publish a 50-page novel. That's just novels, are normally 150 at least, probably 200, 300, 400 pages, and then get to big novels, and then go up to like 1,000. So, but word count doesn't exactly affect where you land on this graph, because we have really long poems. Generally, if we're adding to the graph, we call those epics, right? And these can be super, super, super long, right? But they can still land in poetry. And on this side, we could have vignettes that are very much prose, that are super short. We can also have like, flash fiction, which can be very short and be prose, but flash fiction could probably also be very poetic. So the graph isn't necessarily enough to understand like all of writing, because there's also probably like a whole nother axis if we really wanted to add there are all sorts of axes we could add. We could add like whether a piece has social commentary versus like sort of being more, descriptive. We could add axes of all sorts of things. So I feel like I need to make a fully comprehensive, like, kind of schizoid graph of understanding writing as an entirety on like a 3-dimensional graph with all these different axes. I think it'd be very fun because I do love graphs, and I'm glad it helped. What I'm hearing is it doesn't really matter because there can be a form of one writing that doesn't at all fit the norm or rules because it's still on one side. Yeah. Like, whether something is poetry or prose is just one way to describe all sorts of different forms, and, you know, it's just a descriptor, right? So basically just write whatever you want and call it whatever you want because you're probably right. But I guess I'm just giving you more maybe nuanced words to describe your work as opposed to short story, which is probably one of the more broader genre type terms. I think a vignette is more of a restrictive form than a short story. You know, prose poetry is a slightly different descriptive term compared to short story, which usually talks about length, and I do think this actually does fall in like too short to be a short story. This could even be like bordering on flash fiction. And I mean, it's obviously not like a six word story, which those are fun. If you haven't tried writing those, I haven't. They're probably fun. Baby shoes. Never worn for sale. So, hopefully that helps. Hopefully that helps at least you. Hopefully it helps some other people too. But, you know, this is stuff that you sometimes kind of learn in English classes. I feel like I know about like vignettes versus prose and these kinds of words from English class, even though I didn't really pay attention. I guess that's just because I was always good at picking up information at school. But yeah, I think these aren't things that are going to help your writing so much as give you a better way to stick a label on your writing at the end, right? Which is useful, right? You don't want to mislead your reader. I'm not saying you have, but let's say I'm pitching you a book and I'm like, oh yeah, it's a small novel, right? It's a small novel. I wrote it, and over the last year, it has fantastical elements. I'm giving you a pitch for an imaginary book, right? Fantastical elements. And it is, I mean, like, let's say I just gave you this. And then I dropped in front of you, I don't know, Game of Thrones. Very long, not very fantasy, admittedly, at least at the start. Like, it's fantasy, but you don't really get into, like, the high fantasy stuff until later. It's a lot of, like, humans fighting humans. But I mean, I don't know. Game of Thrones is a small novel compared to longer fantasy novels. So maybe one would argue that it is short. And if I told you this, and then we could go to the extreme of me giving you a 50-page short story that is completely magical realist, not quite correct either. Game of Thrones, I feel like, is only like 500 pages. I have it right there. It holds my computer up, a Game of Thrones box set that I've read half of. But it's not that long. Like, compared to fantasy books. Like, compared to the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson, which is a series of maybe now 5,000-page books. 5 separate 1,000-page books, and there's supposed to be like 5 more. I don't know if the 5th one's out yet, but it's in progress at least. So labels are important in a sense of giving your reader accurate information, but it doesn't actually speak to the quality of the writing. But of course you want people to find your writing and not bounce off of it by that feeling of being perhaps misled, you know? That this poem kind of talks about. You know, when someone hands you a book and you expect one thing and it's completely different, it's kind of like when your daughter comes out as trans. That's gonna be a great super short clip for TikTok. The first book alone is over 600 and they just get longer. Yeah, I know they get longer. And they get further apart in time because he just writes so slowly. Okay. Well, let's get back to this. I'm talking about the poem because I think we talked about form and structure for about half an hour there or something. Not half an hour. It was like 20 minutes. I guess I didn't ask you, Drowning Devil, all the questions. I presume you're fine with... I mean, I'm not going to presume that you're fine with this going on YouTube, but are you fine with it going on YouTube? Are you fine with it with other people giving feedback if they have it, which now would be a great time because I'm like in a lull of thought. And do you have any questions? Do you have any questions? Ask me questions. Questions make my life so much easier, Drowning Devil. Do you have anything you want me to look at? Nika, I got breakfast and medications. And I'm back, Miss Gin and Juice. Welcome back, Nico. Welcome back. Dude, I love that, like, Gin, as, like, the nickname, has caught on strictly because of your use, Nico, within Gin and Juice. It's great. I love it. I like that I have another nickname, Gin, which is, like, strictly a Twitch nickname, because I don't go by Ginny as much in other circles. What do you think of the brick metaphor? Because I don't know how I feel about it. Yeah, we can talk about the brick metaphor. That's important. A brick. A brick. Oh, I have this new dark blue that I added to my colors. A brick has been added to my home. It's on the second floor, near the door of my son's bedroom. Well, let's talk about bricks and homes, right? As symbols. Bricks tend to be, like, strong and this thing of stability and, like, also, like, foundation, right? Bricks. I mean, I don't know if you really build foundations out of brick, but foundation, right? Something stable, something heavy, something strong. Also, there's another kind of brick, which is, like, the the liberal brick, which is the brick that we throw through windows. Throw through windows, right? This is a kind of brick. Windows. And I only say liberal because liberal is the word that the American right uses for the American, whatever the Democratic Party is. I know that liberal doesn't actually really mean any degree of political disruption. But we have to throw through window brick, right? May I tell you the reason I used brick instead of something else? I mean, no. It would definitely tell you things, but I think I'm the only one that will see this. Well, we're gonna keep going into it. I think, so we have the brick you throw through a window, and you have the stable, and you have the strong brick. You also have the Nokia phone, which is not the kind of brick I think we're referencing here. But I think brick is really interesting because it's not something that can really just appear in a house. Like, generally a house is built, and then it's sort of complete. Specifically, foundation wasn't the word I was looking for. I was looking for structural, right? Because bricks are structural, right? So many extra letters there. And they don't just show up in houses. They just don't do that. because this is what I'm seeing from the brick. And the house is something complete. The house is something that is set in stone. The house, the family, the unit, the whatever. These are all perceptions. And to disrupt something at a structural level is kind of what adding a brick would do, right? It's a disruption probably of like the idea of the entire underlying structure is how I see this metaphor to me, right? Because they don't show up. Alternatively, the bricks that we throw, bricks are, it's kind of funny, right, that we have bricks simultaneously as a structural idea and a symbol of disruption if we're like rioting and protesting, which almost I feel just with these two common like bricks, common societal bricks, make it so perfect because we're altering family, we're altering structure, we're pulling apart the very nature of the home by like being trans. And yet, right, the brick is also intended in some cases as a disruptive piece, which I like this connection. No matter what you tell me, I might like my interpretation more than yours. So maybe you can tell me, because I was really proud of this, to be honest. It would definitely tell you. Yeah, you know what? I'll make an exception just for you, Drowning Devil. Why did you choose the brick? This is not normally what we do on this channel. I basically got it. Let's go. Okay, then yeah. You're not the only one who will see this. That's funny. Yeah. So in that sense, I think you've done something extremely effective, right? With your brick metaphor, because you found a symbol that represents kind of both sides, represents the entire tension of your story, right? The disruptive brick through the window stuck in the wall, and the foundational structural brick, which is the entire tension happening in this woman's mind between her foundations as a whole being shattered by something that is also foundational. No, it's brilliant. Drowning Devil, this is an excellent metaphor. This is so cool. This is awesome. I like it. It works so well. Like, I don't know if other people are agree, but it seems good. No complaints on the brick metaphor. It's on the second floor near the door of my son's bedroom. And I do like this as kind of starting to break this wall, right? Near the door, if we think of the throne brick embedded in the wall, it's like it's knocking these walls down. If we're talking outside the door, right? Near the door of my son's bedroom, right? Encroaching. And then you ask the husband where it came from, and he's like, it's always there. The disruption has always been here, right? And then trying to pull it out, I think is also cool, because now this disruption has become the structural damage has become part of the structure, and that's cool. That's really cool. And honestly, I like it so much that, you know, one of my big common advices here on the channel is, if I really like it and I only get this much writing of it, my advice here is to like do more, because I think, you know, maybe you now more see like the validity of this metaphor. Honestly, I didn't feel too great about it, but I'm glad to hear you like it, right? Like, and it might be And one thing you might not like about, this metaphor in particular is your execution of it. Because we do kind of talk about the brick at the start, and we fairly quickly move away from it. But I think considering the way that the brick, like, fundamentally, very fundamentally, as a symbol, represents the issue that's at play, I could see an entire long short story, like a 20-page short story about this brick, and digging into the brickiness of it. But that's an entirely different task. So like, yeah, I like that one a lot, and I don't know, it's very exciting. I think it's a cool symbol. And then we pivot. A few weeks went by, and I noticed the pictures on the wall are changing. My sun has been replaced because I do think. So here's, not sure I can write that much. I know, and you don't need to. But if you did, that would be very good for you. You'd probably learn a lot by challenging yourself, even to just write 2 pages. I set out to write a short story like a year ago, and it took me 2 months. It was probably started right around this time of year, or the idea first came like a year ago, and it took me until January of the new year, right? So like 2 months to get this short story together. And I had all of these plans for it to be this, like, at least like 10-page short story, really detailed, going into the depth on lots of things. And it was 2 pages. So you can set out to write a long thing and end up with 2 pages, and I think it would still be like really awesome. But also don't push yourself. Like, I think you've already done something cool here. So there's that. But I think one issue, I guess, with the brick, I don't know if I would call it, like, I don't know if issue is the right word, but one point of contrast in your poem is the brick is like a very, very, it's a metaphor that takes some thinking to get to, right? The brick is like, oh, I didn't immediately understand the brick. You asked me about the brick, and I found something really cool in your poem. That's why I like when people ask me about things. Because I don't always know what to look at. But then we jump to, like, the pictures on the walls changing. And this is way less metaphorical, right? Of course, there is almost a magical element to this poem with the sun literally being replaced by the girl, right? That kind of feels like something that would happen in magical realism. But this isn't really even a metaphor, right? The idea of the pictures on the wall, and that's not a problem, but it has a very different feel as writing from the first paragraph, and that sort of asynchronicity might be a reason you're less happy with the brick metaphor, because it's a little more veiled, it's a little more hidden in the background than the pictures on the wall, which are super straightforward. That's true. This all kind of started with the brick metaphor, so I guess it makes sense in my head that the rest ended up weaker, sadly. I wouldn't say it's weaker. I would just say that it's different. And the pictures changing, the sun being replaced, this almost, there's like a fear in this. There's a horror aspect to your house, your structure, your existence changing around you. But I do think, the pictures themselves as this direct representation are less metaphorical than the brick. You could use other parts of the house, you could use other things. And those themselves might be poorly executed, they might be well executed, but I don't think you necessarily do this, like, badly, or that it's weak writing. It's just different, right? And different can feel weak, especially, it can feel weak, because if this is, like, really well done metaphor, and then this is, like, still well done, like, almost magical prose, it might make the reader really want more of the metaphor, and then be sort of disappointed by the prose. But there might also be people in chat saying, I like this more than the start. So it's really about your decision, right? Whether it is weak, whether you do or don't like it, because there is definitely uh, there's good writing. I personally, absolutely, without a doubt, like this more. I think this is really, really, really well done poetry in a sense, at least from the level of finding an extremely effective metaphor, right? I guess I more think it's simpler for something I was trying harder on. I like the metaphor, and I guess it just feels weighed down by the rest. I think I'll go back to fix the rest and keep the brick metaphor. Absolutely, and whatever you do with your poem, it's your choice and your decision regardless of what I say about it. But I agree. I like the metaphor. It's cool. So I wouldn't get rid of it. I think in some capacity there's like a sense that I feel you've kind of struck gold with this one. So, but again, this is all my opinion. Everyone thinks differently about poetry. There might be people who like this stuff more. She's in my house. My son is gone, and she has taken his place. My husband acts like this is normal. We've always had a daughter. Never had a little girl. And I do think there is some reason in what you've done here, in switching to these photos. Because since these are more, or maybe less metaphorical for the reader, they're also sort of less metaphorical, more in the face of the characters in the story, right? Where it goes from a brick, that's kind of weird, what does this mean, to photos, oh, this is like directly affecting me and changing my life, to she is in my house, it's an escalation, which does sort of help bring you to your final line of I know what I have to do. Because I don't think it would be effective in the poem to kind of, for lack of better word, wallow and ditz around in metaphor and, go from talking about bricks appearing and then talk about like the lamps breaking or something, and then talking about different parts of the house like reinventing itself. It doesn't help us get to like the actual girl and the actual decisive action. Now maybe that's okay, and maybe the girl stays entirely metaphor, and the girl is the brick, and the girl is the house changing, and we have this weird almost like haunted house type poem, except the house changing is like the home changing and the family changing. And the dad is maybe saying that the family changes. This is the natural process of the family. It's always been this way. And that's sort of the gaslight of everything staying the same around us, where she sees it as different. I guess I think it's simpler for something Oh, you already said that. I didn't put text in my submission. That's not going to help, Nico. If you send me poetry without a poem, I might have a hard time on that one. Just saying. So then you do have to consider then, how much can I lean into this like brick house structure metaphor and still be able to get to this? And I'm sure there's a way. And I'm sure you can do it and find it. But it's just different, right, from what you have. Ooh, what if I write something, but more? The daughter is haunting the house, like it's still a trans thing, but the parents aren't supportive and the daughter is trying to live on in the background. Certainly possible. And that is definitely sounds cool. Trans girl haunted house. That's a haunted house I would go to. It's a haunted house I would live in. Any trans girls out there, spirit trans girls, want to haunt my house? If so, I'm gonna stop talking. Alright, I'm gonna resubmit with the text attached. Yeah, do that, Nico. like, I guess one example is the daughter linger in the background of the photos, not directly interacting with their family, but they're still. That's cool. And that's a cool, like, horror trope, right? The backgrounds of the images. So you could do some cool things there for sure. And yeah, that's fun. Definitely try that. It could be a daughter, it could be a son, it could be an NB. We love our NBs here. You know, don't forget about the genre non-conforming people. They're low-key the best. Dude, I'm gonna be using genre non-conforming to talk about non-binary people now. Is that bad? So yeah, those are some thoughts on the poem and where you can go from there. I think that's probably a lot of ideas, and we've talked about a lot, and we've done it in like a fairly concise hour and a half. Allegedly. Does anyone else have feedback and ideas on this work for Drowning Devil? Or Drowning Devil, do you have any further questions? Because I would be happy to continue if prompted. Chat, whoever's around. We have a lot of viewers right now, which is crazy. But I know we love the lurkers. I'm not trying to tell you to come out of the woodwork. We love you. You can stay just where you are. I guess, what do you think about the husband? The husband. Interesting. The husband. Also, if anyone else, like if someone has a question like that, what do I think about a part that you're interested in that you want to hear my thoughts on? That's good too. What do I think about the husband? She is in my house. My son is gone. She has taken his place. My husband acts like this is normal, that we've always had a daughter. So there's husband. Let's get the highlighter. This is getting like to be a very marked up poem, which I love. So husband is here. Let's use a bigger one. Husband. No, it's husband. Okay, we're back. You're doing real estate stuff, not playing. That's absolutely fine. That's fine. Like I said, if you're lurking, we love the lurkers. No need. Is there another husband thing? Husband. I asked my husband where it came from. It's buried here. It says it's always been there. Are there any other husband things? I don't think so. So these are the two husband references. Husband appearing. I ask my husband where it came from, but he says it's always been there. And my husband acts like this is normal, that we've always had a daughter. So, of course, like, why I'm happy. I'm glad you're happy, High Caliber. Why are you happy? I mean, you don't need to explain your happiness. If you just want to be in chat and be happy, I'm happy for your happiness. So, we kind of love the husband in a way, because husband sounds like, you know, he says this is normal. We've always had a daughter. He's like accepting. This is a portrait of an accepting person for a trans person, right? They're a daughter. That's who they are. It's great. You know? Beautiful. And I also think, like, as I was saying earlier, with the idea of the quote-unquote gaslight of things changing, I do think the husband plays a very important role in my mind, logically, for the woman to progress into this sort of insanity, this degree of pain that leads to let me like shoot my kid, right? Because do I think it adds or takes away? So yeah, I think the husband adds, because I think the idea of the gaslight, where did I talk about the gaslight? The gaslight was here. Him saying, no, it's always been this way. We've always had a daughter. Like, it can feel like to this person who is troubled by trans girl here, that it feels like this gaslight. It feels like a lie. It's pushing against the things that you know. And of course, this is a person that theoretically, the wife, trusts, right? The wife trusts the husband, and this is another one of those like earth-shaking things. Sometimes, if you have very solid beliefs about something, extremely battered into you, and then someone who loves you or who you love changes and then suddenly like disagrees, that can feel almost like a betrayal. So I do think it also shows a disagreement in the family itself, which, if we're talking about this larger family as like the structure with like bricks thrown into it, I think having the broader structure of the family degrade into like these different pieces is, interesting. And if we were talking about expanding this into like a larger like short story, then you could maybe look into the husband and his thoughts, or maybe the wife's thoughts on the husband's thoughts, that sort of projection, and dig into this character more, because I think he is a fundamentally important part of this structure, and he gives insight onto her decline, right, or into her decline. So I do like the husband, and it also gives us a little hope for this girl. I love hope in my poems. She knows what she has to do. Maybe the husband will come in clutch. So I finished 130 words of the essay and made a university decision. Very happy for you, High Caliber. Glad you get some of it done. It always feels so much better to like get a little bit of work done here, do a little more, spread it out. It's so much more manageable. I think you tend to end up with better work because you get a diversity of ideas across time and restructuring and more looks. So definitely glad you did that and didn't sort of wallow, right? I'm going to come back to this poem after, at this point, a self-care ad break, because we've been at it for a while, right? 2 ad breaks worth of poem is pretty impressive. So you've given me some thought. But don't watch this ad, y'all. At least mute the stream. Don't listen to it. Take care of yourself. Even if you're like working and doing stuff, stand up, take a break, look away from your screen. Really important to do. Drink water, go to the bathroom. That's what I'm going to do. Bye-bye. Hello and welcome back. My name is Jenny, also known as Two-Thirds Lotus, also known as the only trans girl who has ever written poetry, ever. Chats to catch up on. Words. Oh, good job. Congrats, that's awesome. Yay, congratulating people. I did submit a poem. It's only 8 lines long, but it's one of my favorites. I think we've had some pretty killer 8-line poems read on stream, so I wouldn't worry too much about the length. We've been anywhere from a 3-line poem that was like 10 words, not a haiku, to like a 3-page Pinguino Man poem. So we've got all sorts of things. We accept it all. As long as it's not prose. We hate prose. Prose is bad. Unless it's okay. Unless it's good prose. Which is an issue because I like most prose. Don't send me prose, please. Don't send me prose. Don't send me prose. Prose poetry's okay. Prose poetry's okay, but it's still poetry. It's a lie. Prose poetry is a lie. It's just poetry. Prose poetry is a psyop. I don't hate prose. I really like reading prose. I've read a lot. Did I just mess up my nail? No. I've read a lot of prose. I just also threw prose on the floor. I'm reading a lot of prose that I can't get to because it's under other things. But I just can't. I just can't analyze it. It's not my thing. Prose poetry is a psyop. You know, instead of just like quoting like that, you can clip the channel, and that gives me free content. Probably too late now. It might not be. It gives you like 2 minutes in the past. If I submitted a 6,000 word short story, would I be upset with me? Lol, JK. I wouldn't, but the idea is funny. So like, you could submit like a page of it. You see, the poetry, y'all, were you might have not been paying attention, but we did the poetry to prose spectrum, and we talked about genre non-conforming art. I don't know how to clip on Twitch, girly. There's like I mean, it's far too late now, but I think you basically, you know, when you like scroll over the screen and you can see like the pause button and stuff, there should be like a clip button in the bottom right, and then you can edit it and trim it to like get the part that like is good. And then, but I also highlight, I gave myself a stream marker for later because I think that's a pretty good clip. A potato bun, yeah, you could submit like a page. Like, if we're talking, like, actual straight, like, story prose, that's, like, block paragraph, I can probably do 1 page max. So I don't, like, hate prose. It just scares me. I'm scared. I'm a fragile little girl, and when too much information gets piled on me on stream, I get scared. I am fragile. I'm very fragile. Y'all better continue being as nice and wonderful as you already are. No, I know. It's okay. Yeah, no worries. I'm leaning into the bit. It's all a bit. Everything I say is a bit. Or is it? So we have this poem, She Forced Her Way Into My Home, that we were looking at. So we talked about the husband. I think I gave you a suitable answer about the husband, Drowning Devil. That I like the husband. I think the husband plays an important role in that feeling of the escalation of the poem and the gaslight, which I really like calling it the gaslight, just because it feels like a really accessible way to understand what someone with very solid views would say. Right? Same, Jin, same. Too many words are scary. Well, you're gonna have to like write essays in school, so you better figure that out. I mean, I've read essays on stream. I think essays are different. I love essays. But y'all, I forgot to do the pinned comment of what we're reading. I'll just wait till the next poem at this point. Yeah, words are scary. That's why I go on Twitch and say words for like 3-4 hours a day, like every day except one. I don't even know. Everything's scary if you let it be. Do you have any other questions, Drowning Devil? Or does anyone have things about this poem? Like words, you're like, Ginny, tell us why Drowning Devil used this in their poem, because or your own analysis, your own responses for this poem. Does anyone not like this poem? This is my favorite thing to ask. We've never had a taker. I will let you know, if you say you hate this poem, you'll be the first. I can read it again for anyone who's sort of been away. She forced her way into my home by drowningdevil12. A brick has been added to my home. It's on the second floor near the door of my son's bedroom. I ask my husband where it came from, but he says it's always been there. I look a little closer. It seems to not fit right into the hole it was placed in. I try to pull it out, but despite the space, it remains stuck in place. A few weeks went by and I noticed the pictures on the walls are changing. My son has been replaced, a girl in his place. She's even in the photos when he was a boy, a girl in pigtails and a muddy dress, replacing my little boy. She's in my house. My son is gone, and she has taken his place. My husband acts like this is normal. That we've always had a daughter. And I've never had a little girl. She is not mine. I want my son back. I want my little boy. I have to handle this. There's a shotgun in the attic. I know what I have to do. She forced her way into my home underneath quite a bit of scrawling by Drowning Devil. You're good on questions. I'd love to hear someone say they don't like it. I'm curious. Gun violence? Gun violence indeed. I guess that is a TW that should be in the thing if I actually pinned the comment, except I'm bad at Twitch. So, I don't know. Someone should just be a moderator and do things for me. But I don't know if I have like someone who's like always on. Implied gun violence? Yeah. Okay, I will say it. It rings not very lyrically to me. Yeah. I think Drowning Devil originally pitched it to me as a very short story and not as poetry, instead of the start that it's not poetry. So, I guess divorce yourself from poem. This is prose. My grammar not good? No one's grammar good. Also, I have one grammatical thing, since I know you do appreciate grammatical help, Drowning Devil. You said it yourself. It seems to not fit right into the hole it was placed in, comma, I try to pull it out, but despite the space, period, it remains stuck in place. So it's this, dude, it keeps switching to the eraser. Try to pull it out, but despite the space, it remains stuck in place, is, like, the period should be here, and then this should be, like, another comma, because it seems to not fit right into the hole it was placed in, is a full clause. It's a full sentence, right? And then if we say comma, I try to pull it out, but despite the space. Well, this gives a new subject, I, to the sentence, where before we were talking about it as the brick. So we have a new subject, right, and a verb and an object, which means we're definitely doing a new sentence here. And so we can either add throwing a lot of grammar at you, but so that's a place for a period. And then it remains stuck in place is a complete sentence, but I try to pull it out, comma, but despite the space, is it needs to be attached to like whatever despite is spiting, which is remaining stuck in place. So these like absolutely need to be in the same sentence. I try to pull it out. Despite the space, it remains stuck in place. Try to pull it out. Period. Despite the space. That is, yes, you could do a period there. So you could do, because but is like doing that function of connecting clauses. I try to pull it out. I pull it. We have our full sentence, which means we could end it there. And then, despite the space, it remains stuck in place. These just absolutely have to stay together. Okay, as prose, I find it compelling. Cool. Glad you like it, Todd. Needs a bit of editing, for sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think generally my rule for grammar that I always went by, which gets you like 95% of the way, is think about actually speaking it out loud or actually speak it out loud. Because that tends to show you where sentences fall. Let me read this. It seems to not fit right into the hole it was placed in. I would stop there, and that full stop, it was placed in. I try to pull it out. Like if I would do a full another breath and a new idea, it's probably a new sentence. It seems to not fit right into the hole it was placed in. I try to pull it out, but despite the space, it remains stuck in place. Right? It's clear when I say it that despite the space, it remains stuck in place. Or it feels clear to me. Maybe it isn't verbally for some people, but despite the space, it remains stuck in place. I don't separate those. And if it's written with a period, but despite the space, it remains stuck in place. That feels poetic. It does. I write a ton of prose and edit a literary journal. Read it aloud. Have someone else read it aloud. Even then, you'll find needed improvements. Absolutely. I do, but I don't think I know what a sentence is supposed to sound like, lol. Okay, that's fair. One thing, here's a thing. I always read aloud my sentences. Okay. Here's another one. Here's another way to learn grammar, which is sort of the long and arduous way. If you want to learn grammar, you only have to do one thing. It's pretty amazing. Read. A lot. And especially read things that are like hard, that are linguistically hard. Like I would say like don't jump right into freaking Critique of Pure Reason by Immanuel Kant. That's just it's also a translation, so don't do that. But find something that is difficult, put together like often kind of academically, what we would call kind of like classic literature. These are things that are going to be put together properly with grammar and often use complex sentence construction. And find any time, like don't just read it, don't just skim, don't just read quickly. Go through the sentences, and as you're reading, if you feel like a hiccup in grammar, like sometimes a sentence will have a lot of clauses and it'll be like, here's an idea, comma, and here's something else, comma, but, and then, but a new idea, thus, comma, parenthetical after an idea. Like these things can happen in like a piece of work, right? Period. You know? And these can take like a bit of effort to parse. You'll see it and you're like, whoa, this is like a long sentence, it's confusing. But if you just look at like how the commas are working and try to understand and emulate, I think that works. Then you should probably put my basic ass romance novels down for a bit. That's possible. If you hand it to someone else to read, they will often stumble over your mistakes. Agree, reading is fundamental. All the best writers read copiously. Non-readers hit a ceiling rather early as writers. Yes. So, one of my favorite English teacher, the only English teacher I had in college before I dropped out, Dr. A, Kirk Astle, Astle. If you go to Michigan State, take a class with him. He's great. He said to me, fairly simple advice. So he was big on this idea of being autodidactic. We're done with cursive for a minute. Autodidactic, right? And this means auto, self, didactic, teaching, right? That's what it means. That's what those roots mean. And he said, be autodidactic. And it's like, okay, thanks, teacher. How do I be autodidactic? And he said, read and write. If you want to learn to be a writer, it is not about going to school. It is not about studying with the best people. Well, it kind of is. It's about reading, and that is studying with the greatest professors you can find. Shakespeare is the greatest professor you will find on the sonnet. And often plays and stuff. I mean, we exalt Shakespeare a lot, but I do think he writes sonnets really well. I think Garcia Marquez will be one of the greatest, or Maya Angelou, or Murakami will be the greatest professors you can ever study with if you're trying to write magically and magical realism. And so study with them. Go read. Go learn what they're doing from what they're doing. Read, and it'll help you. I've been on a really bad period of not reading that much over the last few months, and I feel like I haven't been improving much as a writer. And I feel like whenever I'm really improving as a writer is when I'm doing both of these things at the same time. But if you just read, right, and just read something, put it down, kind of forget about it. Because we do. It's really hard. Science shows we forget some big percentage of the books we read, that we're not good at this. So we need to be doing these things together. If we just read and then switch to writing, we'll lose a lot of the value of the reading. If we just write for a bit and switch to reading, we're going to lose value too. So these are muscles that we work together. So yes, I think you're writing a lot and it's great. Read, maybe take a quarter of that time that you're writing right now, or half, depends on where you're at and what feels comfortable, and switch that over to reading. And it's going to help you a ton, right? And school is going to help you. It's going to push you to read. And I encourage you to really engage with, if you have English class, to really engage with those books, because they tend to give you good stuff to read, admittedly, as much as we hate to admit sometimes as high schoolers that teachers know what they're doing sometimes. Some teachers suck. Gotta have that. But, these are this is strengthening, since you used the little flex emoji. This is strengthening both your bicep and your tricep, right? If we're gonna write, if we're gonna lift the weight, let me start over. So, if you want to get better at writing, it's like training these muscles. It's like training to lift, and you have multiple muscles in your arms, right? And you have the bicep, you have the tricep, and the bicep might be writing because it's, the big one, we show it off, right? But the underlying muscle behind it is the tricep. And we need to train this one too, because if this is weak, then we don't have balanced muscles, and it can actually cause us issues. And it can make our overall product, our lifting, also known as our writing, less good, right? And you see this in exercise in general, right? You need balanced muscles, core, you need abs, but also the back abs and side abs and chest and all these stuff. People don't just exercise on muscle all the time. So It's how you get better at writing. I'm just gonna say this because I don't know when classes end, but I know, but I don't know when's the next time I'll be able to join a stream when classes start. Oh, because it's definitely like during your class day. Yeah, that's tough. Because what, I stream at 3 p.m. Eastern. Granted, that means I'm usually on until like a bit later. You can definitely come in on weekends. I mean, the evening streams are like gaming, and that's probably too late at that point. But of course, your education and your growth as a writer is way more important to me than you like being in my chat. As much as I love having chat and people talking to me and sending me their work, and I love your work, you should pursue, that. And if that's what takes priority, you should give it priority. I will say, yesterday on stream, I read a poem from someone not in chat, and they submitted it with that intent just to like watch on YouTube. So if you want, definitely you could just turn into like a YouTube VOD warrior who watches on your own time, on-demand content. And I think, I guess to anyone on YouTube, if you do watch the VODs and can't make it to stream, like, absolutely submit and just like, I guess let me know in the forum. Like, you could say, submit, and you can read this without me on stream. I don't prefer it, but if that's like what has to be done, then that's fine. Indeed, but you're likely smartest friend, and you make things make sense to me. I'm really glad. I'm really glad to help make things make sense. And that's good. Luckily, I think there's VODs. I think there's our Discord, right? You can always ask questions whenever you want in Discord. I don't necessarily do like the full deep analysis if people just drop things in chat. I guess let me drop the Discord and stuff for anyone new. I forgot to post in a Discord my self promo. What am I doing? I don't need to be on Discord. I need to be on Twitch. For those new or who are not new and just aren't in the Discord, that's a place where we definitely have community. I really don't need to be showing all this. So there's the Discord, the Island of the Lotus Eaters in chat. And for anyone also new, there's all of the VODs, or all the VODs that are allowed, go up in that YouTube playlist, and that's where the Poets of Twitch is. And then when we do analysis of Bukowski and his poetry, there's a separate playlist on YouTube for Bukowski. So those are like all resources, right? Those are essentially maybe not the most clear, maybe not the most direct lessons on poetry, but they're lessons on poetry that will be on the internet, I guess until I have some desire to take them down, like if they no longer represent what I think, but I don't really have an intention to take those off the internet, so they're a resource, right? And I think, maybe like a part of me does want to look into making some more like specific content on YouTube and building that out as like part of, 2/3 Lotus or whatever, and making a sort of video on like a 10 axes chart that describes absolutely everything you need to know about writing, which would probably take research. Or like, just those kinds of videos that are fun. I mess up my nails more? No, I didn't. We're so good. So Twitch is obviously the most direct. You can talk in chat. I can talk back to you in some capacity. It's never going to be as great as like a real conversation, but it's direct. And unfortunately, all the other things are going to be less direct. But I definitely want to make sure that just because they're less direct and less maybe informative for the person, that those are still valid options to find, community and support as a writer and learn and succeed. So that's all like super important to me. God, I can't help but imagine after all this effort, what happens if the school doesn't accept you for some reason? Accept? It doesn't really make sense for why they wouldn't, but I don't know. Don't worry too much about those things. And at the end of the day, yeah, I accept. At the end of the day, if like, high schools accept people who drop out and come back in. That's nothing. That's nothing. Like, but if that were to happen for some sort of awful reason, there are other ways to learn, and I do. As much as I like always encourage people school, there are other ways to learn, and again, my teacher and autodidacticness. So, and training those muscles. So, I wouldn't be too stressed out over that either way, because I don't think that's like an end of the world situation for you, since you're clearly already like learning and doing writing and improving now, as but school is a great way to learn. Oh, Jenny, by the way, I was wondering if you would mind looking through that poem I submitted that day again. Which poem? Like, oh, from like the other day, like from like the day after election day or whatever? Maybe. I have to look at it. But I think that's probably, I think we're probably feeling pretty done. Stains, yeah. I think we're feeling pretty done with this poem for today. So I'm going to read this one, and then we will move on to something else, and it'll be great. And I'm not sure what that is yet, but I'm going to read She Forced Her Way Into My Home by Drowning Devil. A brick has been added to my home. It's on the second floor near the door of my son's bedroom. I ask my husband where it came from, but he says it's always been there. I look a little closer. It seems to not fit right into the hole it was placed in. I try to pull it out, but despite the space, it remains stuck in place. A few weeks went by, and I noticed the pictures on the walls are changing. My son has been replaced. A girl in his place. She's even in the photos when he was a boy. A girl in pigtails and a muddy dress replacing my little boy. She's in my house. My son is gone, and she has taken his place. My husband acts like this is normal, that we've always had a daughter. I've never had a little girl. She is not mine. I want my son back. I want my little boy. I have to handle this. There's a shotgun in the attic. I know what I have to do. She Forced Her Way Into My Home by drowningdevil12. Excellent work. Small claps, because snapping will maybe mess up my nails right now. Excellent work. Thank you for watching. I encourage you to check out the rest of the series, follow if you enjoyed, and stop by Twitch if you want to share your own work. See you there.